Hey, welcome to Extended. Let's take an extended look at today's segment about what paint is all about. So let's review by playing the actual segment that was on, and I'll have additional content at the end of that. And I think I talk a little bit too much. I hope I edit it out by the time you guys get to this. Who knows? Let's head to the chalkboard and learn all about paints. So basically, what is paint? Paint is basically a protection. Something that we would put on our cars or put on our houses to keep from rusting out or keeping rain out. Now, paint is made up of three basic compounds: pigment, binders, and solvents. Let's start with pigments. Pigments are color chemicals in the paint. They come from all kinds of different chemicals that make the different colors. Like titanium white, which is from sand, makes actually white paint. Iron oxides make yellows, reds, orange. Think of how iron turns to rust. Chromium oxide makes paint that's green. And black is basically carbon. Think of toast. When you burn toast, all it is that compound. Now, pigments are typically solids, so you couldn't use them to paint by themselves. They'd be difficult to apply. They wouldn't even spread evenly. They wouldn't even stick to paper or walls. They just wash straight off if they got wet. And that's why paints also contain substance called binders. Their job is to glue the pigment particles to one another, but also to make them stick to the surface you're painting. Some binders are made of natural oils, such as your oil paints, linseed oil. But most now are made of synthetic plastics. Visualize the binder as an invisible skin of plastic with a colorful pigment dispersed through it, and you can see just how the paint gives a layer of protection. Now, mixing a pigment and a binder together is all fine and dandy, but what you'll just have is a big, thick glop of substance that's difficult to spread. Ever try painting a wall with mud? It doesn't really go very well. That is what using pigment and binder is like. It's the reason why paints have a third major chemical component, and that's a solvent. As its name suggests, a solvent is something that dissolves something else. The solvent's job is to make the pigment and the binder into a thinner, and the solvent's job is to make the pigment and the binder into a thinner, more easily flowing liquid that will spread evenly, and that's why paint solvents are sometimes called thinners. Once the paint is spread out, the solvent evaporates into the air, leaving the paint evenly applied to dry and protect whatever it is painting over. So, for different types of paints, the solvent could be anything from water to a turpentine to even an oil, depending on the type of paint. The funny thing about it is that these two here would work together pretty well. You take your chemical compound, which is usually a dioxide or a oxide, whether it's iron oxide or titanium dioxide, which gives you the color, and then you bind it depending on what type of paint it is. If it's an oil paint, well, that's going to take a lot longer to dry because the oil is basically your binder and it's binding the pigment. So how does oil dry? Oil doesn't dry very quickly. The solvent thins it out, but once it gets on there, it takes a long time for it to dry because you have two components that are basically very, very wet. For acrylics, what you're going to find, for acrylics, you have a plastic polymer, and it's very, very, very thin. So think of a layer of plastic going over your plastic or your resin. It covers over, but it holds the pigment in. And the water is the only thing that can break up that plastic and thin out that plastic, or also to be a very, very thick substance. So we're going to go down to the table here, and we're going to take a quick look at just how to thin out certain paints and what happens when you thin out one too much. I know, it looks like a game of Othello. But by doing this, I want to show you how thin that you can actually get something. Now, I've got this brush full of water here, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this paint. And you see, I'm adding water to it. And the more water I add, the thinner the polymers break up to the point where they're not going to cover anything. Let's add a little more here. And you can see where it's actually breaking up completely. I've got to add some more water into my thing here. Good thing I have an editing tool. And you can see this is almost virtually disappeared. That's actually virtually gone because the solvent, there's so much solvent there, it has taken away and broken up the paint. But you can actually thin the paint by just taking a little bit, mixing it in correctly, and as you can see, you still get the coverage that you want without losing any of the paint. And a nice thin coat goes over my nice mat. That's not cool. Let's do it again, only this time let's see what happens with the black. Black is a carbon based. And you can see that all I'm doing is just adding more and more water and breaking up the paint because the solvent in this paint is actually water. And that wouldn't stick to anything. Look at that. We've basically broken up this paint to the point where all we would have to do is take a piece of paper towel, just dab it once, and look, it comes right up. You can't do that with a thick paint. So by taking just a little bit of water, and sometimes the best way to thin your paint is put a little water here, pull a little bit of your paint with your wet brush, and just move it. Move it around. See how that still covers? You can, and the best way to judge a lot of times is just take a paper towel, go over it, and look, it doesn't come up as much as that one bit came up. Look at the white here. I can just take and do this, but I can't do that. It won't come up. So I hope this helps you understand a little bit how paint works. Next week we're going to go into it a little bit better on the differences between certain paints and how the polymers are different, and also in different companies such as the awesome Citadel paints that you get and your Americana. Why is this $1 and this $5? Well, is it something corporate? Maybe a little bit of it is, but for the most part it really depends on the polymers or their binding agents. Now, Games Workshop has a secret binding agent that they use, and that's why their paints, when you add the water, they thin out very easily, but they also don't break apart as easily. And they go on a lot better. So, I hope you enjoyed this extended look. And let's send it up top and I'll say goodbye to you guys. Okay. So there you have it. An extensive look on how paint works. You understand that there's 3 chemicals that are involved: a pigment, a binder, and a solvent. And understanding paint and understanding how it works is going to help you make you a better painter, because in your mind you're going to understand that the solvent and adding water and thinning to a certain degree, you'll understand what the thicknesses are. And understanding how things chemically work will help you go forward. I hope you enjoyed this segment of Extended. Don't forget to check out all the content I got this week, Thanksgiving week here. And also don't forget to check me out on Battling Brushes with my buddy Sam Healy on the Dice Tower. And don't forget to leave wonderful comments on how brilliant I am in Board Game Breakfast. Actually, you don't have to do that. I'm fine right here and happy at my little channel. And I'm very happy being part of the Dice Tower as well. So with that said, folks, I hope you have a great holiday and look for all the content that we're going to be having. And thanks so much for being a part of Extended, and thanks so much for being a part of my channel. It means the world to me, and you guys You know I answer every single email. I answer every single question. So look for more and more stuff, and you never know when you might find the unauthorized Tina pointer. Hope you saw that, Tina. I stole it from you. If you don't know what I mean, go to tinatheboardgamer.com and you'll understand what not .com, on YouTube here. You'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. With that said, have a wonderful holiday. All the best to you and your families. And we'll see you soon.